A lot of my recent videos have kind of revolved around whether Disney will renew the deal for Doctor Who beyond season 2 or not. And whilst I'll still cover if they do eventually announce whether they are, I'm kind of at peace with Doctor Who's future. And I likely won't be covering all the rumours about it in as much detail as I have previously. And that's because really, I don't see it getting cancelled even if Disney pull out. Imagine with me for a second, Disney do pull out of the deal. It's kind of a nightmare scenario for us. I personally don't want Disney to pull out. I think having an international distributor of that size is great for the show, great for the brand, great for getting in new people. But let's say that Disney do pull out. The BBC still own Doctor Who, and the BBC will likely still make Doctor Who. In fact, we've heard this before from Russell T Davies himself. He said in a recent Guardian article, if Disney collapsed tomorrow, we just get together and make it, and all the stories would become claustrophobic ghost stories, which actually sounds quite good. I think even if Disney pull out, which again, I don't want, and I think they do add value, I don't think Doctor Who necessarily goes anywhere. I think it will still be on the BBC because frankly, it's too profitable for them to completely drop it. I can't think of many other shows in the UK that can sell out stadiums playing the music from the series. I can't think of many other BBC shows that can sell action figures. I can't think of many other BBC shows that sells the amount of books and audios and comics and clothing and everything else that Doctor Who encompasses. And this was kind of nailed on for me with a very recent article that came out literally just about an hour ago at the time I'm recording this, where the BBC have said that BBC iPlayer, its streaming service that's kind of their equivalent to Netflix in the UK, has become the fastest growing video on demand service, and it credits for that growth, among other things, The Traitors, Race Across the World, the Olympics, and Doctor Who as some of their core tenets of why they've grown their audience this year. So even in a weakened state, because I don't want to beat around the bush, Doctor Who didn't do as well, viewing figures wise, as I'd have liked it to this year. Putting that out there now, I'm not saying the viewing figures are fantastic. Even in a state that isn't what I would consider the ideal, Doctor Who will likely still be fine, because there are enough people who care enough about it, buy enough stuff with the Doctor Who logo on it, for Doctor Who to be worthwhile for the BBC. And even if, for whatever reason, at some point in the future, the BBC did not believe that it was valuable anymore, they would likely either sell it off, or eventually someone else at the BBC would probably come along and revive it a couple of years later anyway. There's this quote from Stephen Moffat I like, where he says, "Cancel Doctor Who at your peril, because someone like me will come along in a few years and keep it going again." And I think that's true. Even during the Wilderness years, because I've been doing a lot of research on that period for an upcoming video, there were constant pitches and meetings and discussions about bringing Doctor Who back in all sorts of forms, be it TV, film, radio. There were always people trying to keep Doctor Who on, even when it wasn't. I think Doctor Who is just at a level now where, like with something like Star Trek, even if, a series comes out that isn't that successful, whatever, it can weather that. It's been long enough, it's been on long enough, it's established enough to where it can weather those things. I think as a fan base we have kind of a collective PTSD over 1989, even if, like me, you weren't alive for when Doctor Who was cancelled. But it's important to acknowledge that we're in a very different position than we were in 1989. In 1989, the BBC execs pretty much hated Doctor Who, and they weren't that quiet about it either. Now, they see it as one of their core brands, one of the core reasons they connect with particularly younger audiences, which is vital for a company that is predominantly focused on TV, which is increasingly struggling to bring in young people, because people my age and younger, they don't watch TV that much, terrestrial TV. They're all on Netflix, they're all on Disney Plus, and indeed YouTube, which this is what this is, and TikTok. So no, I don't think Doctor Who is at the top of the world at the moment, but I also don't know whether it needs to be. I went through a phase when Russell came back of really wanting those glory days back, i.e. sort of 2005 to 2010, where Doctor Who was everywhere, and it was on top of the world, and there was nothing else like it in the UK, and it had all these spin-offs and merch and all of that. And don't get me wrong, if that day ever came again, I'd be the happiest guy on the planet. But I've kind of come to accept the fact that it's likely not going to happen. I think we all assumed that like Russell was going to come back and then like he was going to wave a magic wand and it would be the early 2000s again and everyone would be buying figures and everyone would be watching BBC One, and it just isn't that, and I think that's fine. We're still getting a spin-off in The War Between the Land and the Sea. We still got basically Confidential back in the form of Unleashed. So we're still getting more content than we were previously anyway. It's just not quite as mainstream, in the UK at least, as it was in the early 2000s. But I think I'm okay with that now. I think for me now, Doctor Who doesn't need to be a mega successful thing on the top of the world like the MCU. To be honest, given the recent state of things like the MCU and Star Wars, I'm not sure I want that to be the future for Doctor Who. I'm not sure I want a constant stream of content coming out for the sake of it, just because. I thought that's what I wanted, back when the MCU was a lot more, in my opinion, sort of cohesive and enjoyable to watch, but now I'm kind of like, no, I don't think that is the future for Doctor Who. And I don't think I want that to be the future for Doctor Who. And if that means that Doctor Who is smaller, but still successful in the UK, and maybe does have an international streaming partner, if not Disney, likely one of the others will pick it up. Doctor Who has had streaming deals with the likes of HBO, Netflix, and BBC America before. It isn't new that Doctor Who gets shopped around internationally. Then I think I'm okay with that. I think I'm okay with the idea of it not being a big empire again. As much as the idea of it excited me, I don't think I'll be mad if Doctor Who just continues pretty much in its current form. I honestly don't even think it'll get cancelled entirely. I think the worst we could ever get would be basically becoming like a special event series where you'd get like a couple specials per year, which, to be honest, as much as I would prefer obviously having a full series, is essentially what we were having for the last couple of years anyway. I realise that some people are going to say, oh, you wouldn't be saying this if Doctor Who was like massive again. And you're right, I probably wouldn't. You're just coping because it's not as big as RTD1 or whatever. And maybe there's an element of that, but also I'm sort of like, I've been enjoying this era more than the previous one. Is it perfect? God no, there's issues with it, but I've been enjoying it a lot more, and ultimately, isn't that what matters? Does it matter if Doctor Who's getting 12 billion viewers as long as I'm enjoying it? Not really. And obviously if you're not enjoying it, that's totally fair, but I'm saying for me, why the viewing figures don't necessarily matter to me anymore because I'm enjoying the show. Don't get me wrong, I will care if Doctor Who gets cancelled, of course I will. But I just don't see it happening. But what are your thoughts on this topic? Be sure to leave them down in the comments below. Please be civil. I know whenever you talk about this subject online, a lot of people are very vocal. But as long as we can keep it nice and chill, that's fine. Like the video if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you later.